they were U.S. diplomats, they weren't ours. And so unilaterally, Canada couldn't do anything about it. We had to, of course, work with the U.S. The U.S. had to concur since they were U.S. diplomats. But by that time, the communications were largely Tehran to Ottawa to Washington, Washington back to us through our embassy. It was a triangle. Well, we put together some plans, and then we needed the involvement of the Americans, so the CIA put together a plan. There were really 3 exfiltration plans, if you would, and eventually when the 2 CIA officers, agents came on the Saturday before the Monday when they left, the U.S. diplomats who were with us opted for the CIA option, which was the documentary team. And they were, they all left. Our two, the couple who'd stayed with us stayed overnight at the Sheardowns. The Sheardowns had gone back to Canada 10 days before. So they were there. They all agreed that this was going to be pulled off, even though a couple were reluctant. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, they headed out in our 2 embassy cars. The CIA officers were there. We had one other officer quietly standing by. Roger Lucy, my colleague, was at home in communication with everybody. I was at home beginning to pack and waiting. And eventually, after some gives and takes, they got off at about 10 o'clock. By this time, I'd sort of thrown stuff in a suitcase. I went to the embassy with the military police officer, Sergeant Gauthier, and we smashed up I smashed up the cipher machine with a big sledgehammer and what have you, and destroyed all that. We'd already destroyed all our confidential documents. And I put a sign on the door, temporarily closed. And it never did open for 8 years, but that's what I put on.
I told them, I repeat it again, any change or the hardness or the harshness which may be imposed on the hostages, it's only the government of Canada who is going to be responsible for it. That they have risked to making jeopardies under such tensions, everything in order to have some few votes. It is really, to me, is extremely ridiculous and inhuman. Therefore, we even don't bother to protest what Canada has done, but we indicate that sooner or later, here or anywhere in the world, Canada will pay for this violation of the sovereignty of Iran, the forgery of the passports, and the actions they have taken.
After a while, prolonging this crisis was obviously in the interests of some people on the Iranian side. They used it as a club to beat their enemies. So they first went after their own coalition partners, the provisional government, the Muslim intellectuals, the National Front people. Then they turned against the leftists. And once they had driven these people into the political wilderness, then I think it was sometime in August, according to the accounts, it was Khomeini himself who told his advisors, we have to fix this because clearly it was of no more use. But for a certain period, and it was useful. By late July, the Shah had died, the political landscape had shifted in favor of the most radical and hardline groups. So there was no need to hold us anymore. But even from that time, it still took about 5 months of bargaining to get us out.
پایانش هم خب خیلی ها صحبت کردن که داره خیلی طول میکشه، بذاریم زودتر حل بشه، این مسئله دیگه پتانسیل لازم رو نداره. اینها من نمیتونم الان خیلی تجزیه تحلیل بکنم که چرا امام بعد از یه مدتی گذاشت که اصلا این موضوع رو بگذاریم در اختیار مجلس و امام خواستم مثلا به یه نوع مثلا فرض کنیم که حالا قانونی تر، حالا منتسب کردنش به مجلس حالا مردمی و قانونی موضوع رو مثلا به یک نتیجه برسوننش و در این حال مردم هم مثلا این رو قبول کنن که مثلا از یه مکانیزم جدید قانونی مثلا این قضیه حل شده.
آقای هادی بفرمایید.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. در 13 آبان سال گذشته دانشجویان مسلمان پیرو خط امام دست به این عمل انقلابی زدند و مورد تایید امام و امت و همه ما شد. خواسته ای که از روز اول مطرح شد این بود: شاه و اموال شاه. هیچی دیگه غیر از این از اول مطرح نبود. شاه مخلوع هم در درست حدود 100 روز قبل به جهنم واصل شد. یعنی اساسی ترین شرط ما که اگر ما میتونستیم شاه رو بیاریم ایران و اینجا محاکمش بکنیم، بزرگترین امید رو به مستضعفین داده بودیم. اما ما باید ببینیم چه شرایط رو به ما میدن. ممکنه از هیچ شرطی رو به ما ندند و ما هم محاکمه بکنیم و اونا هم به سزای خودشون برسونیم و مبارزه در هر صورت با آمریکا ادامه داره. چه گروگانا آزاد بشن، چه گروگانا آزاد نشن، چه شرایط رو بدن چه ندن. پس این شرایطی که هست شرایطی که از اول امام و دانشجویان گفتن و بعدم کمیسیون این شرایط رو بسط داده. شرایط ما خیلی داریم، شرایطمون یکیش این که آمریکا اصلا نابود بشه، ولی عملی نیست. این 4 شرط عملی بوده که کمیسیون آورده.
آقای آیت به عنوان مخالف مذاکره صحبت.
این کلمه مذاکره خب خواه ناخواه در درجه اول آمریکا رو به ذهن متبادر میکنه، چون طرف اونه و این رو هم امام و هم ملت در صحبتاشون نفی کردن و از نظر حقوقی هم نتایج بسیار ناجوری خواهد داشت. اگر منظور باشه یه واسطه‌ای، مثلا بگیم پاپ یا فلان شخص یا نهضت‌های آزادی بخش، این هم من معتقدم که کمیسیون در مرحله اول پس از بررسی موضوع و پیشنهاداتی که میده و تعیین این طرف، چون بدون تعیین ما حق مذاکره به کمیسیون بدیم و کمیسیون بره یه حرفای بزنه، چون تصمیم نهایی هم با مجلسه، هیچ ضمانت اجرایی هم نداره، بنابراین مذاکره رو باید ممنوع کنیم.
خب آقای شبستری تو.
آقای محمد مجتهد شبستری موافق مذاکره.
در دنیا اگر این مجلس و یا این کمیسیون ندونه که دشمن امریکا و غیر امریکا چه عکس العملی داره، تا چند اندازه میخواد عقب بره، نظراتش به کجا رسیده، چه امتیازاتی میخواد بده یا نمیخواد بده، اگر اینها را ندونه چگونه میتواند شما را در جریان صحیح اون چه که میان ما و دشمن انجام میگیره قرار بده؟ یک طرفه که در دنیا مشکلات بین المللی رو نمیشه حل کرد. اگر میخواید بفرمایید که باید محاکمه بشه، خب تصمیم بگیرید بفرمایید که این کمیسیون مأمور محاکمه است. اینی که نمیفرمایید. میفرمایید یک کمیسیونی است که میخواد بررسی کنه جوانب گوناگون این مسئله را به مجلس گزارش کنه، مجلس تصمیم بگیره. بررسی گوناگون مسئله از جمله اینه که باید بدونه دشمن چگونه فکر میکنه، چقدر عقب نشینی کرده، دیگران چی میگن و کسب این اطلاعات بدون برقرار کردن تماس ممکن نیست. برادران و خواهران عزیز، در شعار گیر نکنیم، واقعیت ها رو ببینیم.
آقای شبستری میگه ما باید از موضع دشمن مطلع باشیم. رسما کارتر اعلام کرده من به هیچ وجه عذرخواهی نمیکنم. این شرط اساسی 4 تا شرط امام بوده. وقتی که رسما دشمن مشخص میکنه، شما این کمیسیون مذاکره بکنه چی رو بگه؟ قول اجازه بفرمایید آقای نقبی، شما رعایت نوبت بکنید.
شما حرفتون بزنید، حالا یه نفر بزنید.
وقتی که من میخوام با آمریکا مذاکره بکنم، من به عنوان یه عضو کمیسیون، تمام کمیسیون بره با آمریکا یا به یه میانجی مذاکره بکنه. اگر حق مذاکره پیدا بکنه، آغاز خطری است که تمام انقلاب رو نابود میکنه. آمریکایی که تمام قواعد بین‌المللی رو به نفع خودش چیده، همه جا رو به استخدام خودش درآورده، همین روزا داره جوونا توی مسجد رو بمباران میکنه آلت دستش. با این چه مذاکره‌ای هست که آدم بکنه؟
یه مطلب اینجا صحبت شد که ما اقتصادمون فلج. جناب آقای صحابی که واقعا ما احترام بهش میذاریم،
علاقه هم داریم بهشون، از نظر سیاست کاریشون و سابقه سیاسی و مبارزات سیاسی و مذهبی ایشون برای ما روشنه، احترام هم میذاریم. ولی این مطلب رو ایشون گفتن اقتصاد ما فلج شده، نم چی شده، به خاطر این ما باید مذاکره کنیم.
بحث دیگری دیده.
اینو نباید الان در این موقعیت ما پیش بکشیم. یعنی من به خاطر همین بحث دارم میگم، میخوام بگم که این مذاکره را بر مبنای این که اقتصادمون فلج شده نباید بذاریم.
من الان خبرنگارهایی که تشریف دارید و کسانی که صدای ما رو میشنوید به عنوان مدیر و مسئول این مجلس یه دو سه جمله دارم که عرض بکنم. ملت آمریکا، ما با کسانی که مسئول جنایات آمریکا هستند، دولت و گردانندگان دولت آمریکا، خیلی حرفی نداریم، چون میدونیم اونا حرف حق به گوششون نمیره و راه گفتن حق همین است که دانشجویان مسلمان ما انتخاب کردند، یعنی گلوی اونها رو بگیرن، فشار بدن تا حرف حق رو بفهمن. شما هم میتونید. معلوم شد که یه ملت مستضعفی میتونه از طریقی که انتخاب میکنه حقوقش رو از یک دولت نیرومندی هرچند ابرقدرتی مثل امریکا بگیره.
من خودم معتقدم گروگانگیری در مجموع این اثر رو داشت که امکان دخالت خارجی و ضربه جدی به انقلاب رو گرفت و چنین اتفاقی نیفتاد. من الانم معتقدم این اثر رو داشته، ولی از یه زمانی به بعد در ماهای آخر به نظر من دیگه نگه داشتن گروگان ها حاصلی نداشت.
The other thing was somebody asked me on that first day, said, how long do you think this can last? And my reaction was to remember the Pueblo. The Pueblo was a U.S. Navy listening ship that was off the coast of North Korea. And the North Koreans captured it, and they captured it in an election year. And an election year basically freezes the ability of the American government to do much of anything. And the Pueblo was released after the election was over, but before the inauguration. And so I told that person on the first day, I mean, at the very outside, we may very well be looking at being here for over a year, sometime between the presidential election and the inauguration.
We knew something was up, but not much. We had no access to outside news. No radio, no TV, no newspaper, nothing. But in December of '80, we did have a visit from an Algerian delegation. It was the Algerian ambassador in Tehran, plus some representatives of the Algerian Foreign Ministry, came to see us. They went from room to room, met individually with all of us. Didn't give a lot of details, but it was clear these were very serious people. We also, of course, knew the war was going on. And with the war going on, it made very little sense to hold on to us.
The interesting thing to me was with the evening bread and tea came a whole host of pills, you know, Geritol, vitamin pills, you name it. And okay, what's the message here? They don't want us to get sick because you don't want to release sick hostages. So even during that period in jail, I was fairly confident that come January 20th at the latest, and again, barring an accident, the program was we were going to be let go.
Once the Algerians had met the Algerians, we knew something serious was going on, but what and when we didn't know. We knew that Reagan had won the election. We knew there was going to be a change of administration on the 20th of January, so that if they couldn't get it done by then, they might have to renegotiate. But in a situation like that, you don't get your hopes up, because if you do, you very easily get disappointed.
خبر من راحت کردی شما که فارسی خوب ماشاءالله بلدی. اول قلبتون رو ببینم. سر جاشه؟ گاهی جابجا میشه زمین برام.
Then the next stop was a medical examination, and you know, I had a minder through all this process. And as I was going into the room where the doctors were, John Limmer was coming out. First time I'd seen him since November 4th, 1979. But I had seen him on television at these 2 Christmas dues that the student group had arranged for people they held. And early on, he had also been on television because as a fluent Farsi speaker, when a group of diplomats actually was allowed some access to people being held at the embassy in the first couple of weeks, he in effect was the linguistic interface between the students and this group of diplomats. So I said, John, how are you doing? And he said, fine, thanks, good to see you again. And he went one way and I went the other into the room where the doctors were. And at that point, my minder briefly stepped out and the doctors were speaking French to one another. And so I said, you know, the obvious, vous êtes Algérien? Mais bien sûr. So all that need to be said, you know, with Algerian doctors there, that was fairly convincing proof that we were on the eve of the end of it all, which came the next day, of course.
One of the Iranians who was in on it from the very start, came into the room where I was being held at the foreign ministry at the guest house. And I guess the other guys in the room had already gone somewhere else to talk to somebody. And this guy's speaking to me in Farsi, which is a language I studied, I understood. But what he had to say to me in Farsi was so outrageous, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that they were that sort of plotting. What he said to me was that the decision had been made to release some of the hostages, that each of us was going to go down and be interviewed on television by an Iranian woman, Mehri, who got to be fairly well known in the United States. Then he says to me, after the interview is over, they're going to decide whether or not you're going to be one of the hostages who is released. And I was really, as I say, I was stunned at how incredible this was. And I said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat this to me in English. You're going to have to tell me what you're talking about. And by golly, he said the exact same thing. He said, we're going to do interviews. After the interviews are over, we're going to decide which ones of the hostages are going to be released and which ones are going to stay behind. So that kind of sort of motivates you when you sit down. And I wasn't going to lie to anybody, but then again, I wasn't going to deliberately spike my chances. And I really didn't believe him. You know, I really did think we were all going to be released, and what he was doing was just playing for the best interview he could on the camera. So the question was, how did the guards treat you? Well, some of them were good and some of them were bad. All right, what was the food like? Well, sometimes the food was good and sometimes the food was lousy. And what were the living conditions like? Well, sometimes they were nice and sometimes they were. But there were other guys, a couple of the Marines really took them on, you know, really, despite this implied threat, they just went right at them, the guards were nasty and whatever, the whole bit. So it's kind of funny.
Your name, your job, and today's date. I was the press attaché of the USS.
I think that was the one time that I met our friend Nilüfer Eptikar. I know she goes by the name she prefers the name Masume, but I think the name that I remember her from was Nilüfer. Anyway, we met her there. And she was doing this interview and she said, were you treated well? Didn't we treat you nicely? My only thing I could say to her was, I said, you had a possibility to do something really good with this revolution and you really screwed it up. What a shame. So that was about, 2, 3 in the morning, I think. And then we spent the next day just waiting And it must have been about 7:30, 8:30 at night, Tehran time. We started hearing guns, heavy guns going off, artillery going off, but it sounded like saluting rounds, as though they were celebrating some kind of victory. And then a few minutes later, they came in and said, Pat, put your stuff together. Whatever you have, we're going to the airport.
Somehow it's like a war story, and you're a combatant, and after so many years, you only think of somehow the positive parts of your tribulations, but not the negative. And your mind, in order for you to stay healthy, gets rid of all those moments where you're frightened to bits that this is the last moment in your life. And the bitterness that you felt towards the guards and how they treated you subsides. And then the funny parts of it come into play, such as some of my guards telling me, when this is all over, can you get me a visa to go to the United States? And I'd stand up and say to them, what, are you crazy? Look what you're doing to me.
I will not forget being pushed and shoved up the ramp of that aircraft by yelling, screaming Iranian hostage takers. I will not forget saying to the principal hostage taker that I knew at that point at the top of the stairs, the ramp, I said, I look forward to the day when your country and mine can again have normal diplomatic relations. I said that then as I was pushed into that beautiful aircraft, and I've said it ever since.
All the American people, one of the acts in my life which has been the most moving and gratifying in meeting with and discussing the future and the past with the now liberated Americans who were held hostage in Iran for so long. I pointed out to them that since their capture by the Iranian terrorists and they are being held in this despicable act of savagery, that the American people's hearts have gone out to them, that our nation has been united as perhaps never before in history, and that the prayers that have gone up from the people around the world to God for their safety.
When we were freed, they flew back to the States. We spent about 5 days in Germany and then flew back, and we met each other at West Point. We stayed there for a couple of days and then came back to Washington, tried to put our lives back together. It was, of course, wonderful to see the children, wonderful to see the family again. I'm sure they were very worried about my condition, whether I'd still be healthy or sane or whatever, but I hope they were reassured. Her family is from Kurdistan, and that's where I was assigned as a Peace Corps volunteer. And she was a teacher, and I was a teacher, and our schedules coincided a couple of times a week. We taught at the same school. You were Iranian yourself,
yes,
and that people from your own country were doing this. How did that affect you?
It was very difficult. And actually, I was ashamed sometimes, even with your family, because I was their daughter-in-law, and their son was in Iran hostage. In my country, took their son as a hostage. That was, for me, was really shameful. It was so embarrassing.
What about for the children?
For children, also the same thing. And I couldn't say, you know, my country took your dad as a hostage, but in the same time, that was difficult. It is embarrassing to see what the people think, what Americans look at me, and your family looked at me, and that was very difficult. They were not Iranians. They were not Iranians. Iranians are not like that. I don't know where they picked those things, and they did this to Americans, and they took the Americans and they went to the embassy, and I didn't believe. At the beginning was very fearful, and first couple of days went okay and was fine. But the only thing I was worried about, it's another group against those groups. They do harm you, and then that blames the other one. Right. An enemy of those people.
Right.
You know, that's why I was afraid of.
یکی از چیزایی که راجع به اشغال سفارت بعضی مخالفا و منتقدانش میگفتن این بود که این طرح جمهوری خواه بوده که شاه رو ببرن آمریکا و سفارتشون اشغال شه و این اتفاقا رخ بده. این معناش این بود که بردن شاه به آمریکا به یه اتفاقی در نهایت منجر میشه. توجه میکنی؟ اونایی هم که میگن طرح جمهوری خواه بوده میگن از فرط وضوح اینو میگن که وقتی که اونا تصمیم گرفتن شاه رو ببرن آمریکا یعنی اینکه این اتفاق بیفته دیگه. سفارت هم این اتفاق رو پیش بینی میکرد، نه به این شکل بلکه به این معنا که خب اگه شما شاه رو میخواید ببرید آمریکا، به وزارت خارجه نوشت اگه شاه رو میبرید خب پس ما دیگه اینجا چی کاریم؟ ما رو برای چی اینجا نگه داشتید؟ خب چرا این حرف رو میزنه؟ برای اینکه سفارت کاملا از فضای داخلی ایران و حس مردم نسبت به قضیه آگاه بود.
I don't know. I know the theories. I know Gary Sick wrote a book about it. It's called The October Surprise. I've seen other books. I do know that the incident, to a large extent, cost Jimmy Carter's presidency.
One of the more unusual, but
had he been able to get us out before, maybe it would have changed the results of the election. I do know that Bill Casey was a strange character and was capable of perhaps coming up with something like this, but I've never seen the evidence.
The fact that the CIA, the National Security Council, which is the White House, was able to send a plane into Iran and had been having ongoing meetings with Iran without anyone else knowing about it, to me strongly suggests that the relationship started well before the first plane went into Tehran, and probably during the election campaign. There is, it's called the October Surprise. Gary Sick, who was in the NSC dealing with the Middle East and specifically Iran during the Carter administration, believes that the Republican Party or supporters, whoever they might be, of Reagan actually conspired with the Iranian government or the Iranian revolutionaries to keep the hostages in prison at least through the election and longer, so that Carter could definitely lose the election. I don't know if that's true. I suspect it was true. A lot of people who would have been involved in this are now dead. Casey, others died. Reagan is dead.
57 years old, successful oil operator.
It's hard to know. George Bush was his vice president, George Bush Sr. He's not going to talk.
خاستگاه این حرکت خاستگاه داخلی بوده و دانشجوها تحلیلی هم از مسائل داخلی آمریکا نداشتن به خاطر عدم ارتباط اطلاعاتی با جامعه آمریکا. هنوزم این پدیده هست. هنوزم به جز عده بسیار کمی بقیه روی مسائل داخلی آمریکا اصلا توجیه نیستن. اصلا نمیدونن اونجا جناح‌های حاکم یا جناح‌های قدرتمند آمریکا چجوری رو کار میان، چجوری کار میکنن، لابی صهیونیست‌ها چجوری، لابی اسرائیلی‌ها چجوریه. خیلی مطلع نیستن مردم از مسائل داخلی آمریکا. بنابراین متأثر از اونم نیستن.
Different presidents come in with, sort of different ideas, different programs they want to pursue. And things change when the new president is elected. For good or bad, the position of the President of the United States has an impact on every country in the world. Fine. Having said that, it affects economies, it affects commerce, it affects political systems, it affects the way we look at human rights, education, etc., etc., etc. It's a big thing. It's not just electing the president of the local parent-teacher association.
هیچ کس، هیچ گروهی، هیچ شخصی من یاد ندارم که این ماجرا رو محکوم کرده باشه در اون روز و بیاد اعلامیه بده که آقا این کار محکوم است. من یاد ندارم. اون موقع گروه‌های چپ مارکسیستی و مائویستی به انواع اقسام وجود داشتن و این طرف حتی نهضت آزادی که در واقع دولت در اختیارش بوده اونها معتقد بودن که اگه یه کار نمادین کردیم خیلی خوب دست شما درد نکنه تمومش کنیم دیگه، تموم بشه، مثلا 4-5 روزه تموم میشه. اما اینکه این کار محکوم است به عنوان یه کار اعتراضی من اینو ندیدم. لذا پس این نکته مهمیه که در اون زمانی که ما این کارو کردیم خیلی دلشون می‌خواسته این کارو بکنن اما نتونستن درست سازمانش بدن، نتونستن درست پیگیر این موضوع باشن تا بتونن یه کار موفق انجام بدن.
فراموش نکنید جنگ جهانی دوم یکی از علل اصلی بروزش حقارتی بود که تو جنگ جهانی اول تحمیل کردن به آلمان، به آلمانی‌ها، نیروهای پیروز، چه آمریکا، فرانسه و انگلیس. اون حقارتی رو که تحمیل کردن 30 سال بعد، 25 سال بعد به صورت جنگ جهانی دوم و هیتلر خودشو نشون داد. درسی که از اون قضیه گرفتن اینه که تو جنگ جهانی دوم دیگه این کار رو نکردن. بنابراین میخوام بگم اون حقارتی که بعد از 28 مرداد و حمایت از شاه بود تنها راهش همین کینه و حقارتی که بود یه نوع واکنشی بود که تو اشغال سفارت رخ داد. نه اینکه البته این به خاطر اون بود، به خاطر بردن شاه بود، ولی نتیجهشون بود.
In Vietnam 50,000 Americans were killed fighting in Vietnam and today we have good relations with the country. In Iran nobody virtually was killed, but the hostages were held and we've never been able to return to any kind of normal relationship. And it's not just the hostage crisis. That was the beginning of it. But then there's been neither side has been willing to make the kind of compromises that were necessary to return to some kind of a regular relationship between governments.
It was a very destructive thing to do. Maybe for Khomeini it was useful because he was able to eliminate a lot of his internal opponents. The cabinet, Bazargan resigned, and of course, what happened with Bani Sadr and all these others. He did eliminate his internal opposition. He was successful in doing that. But the price that Iran paid for this was just huge. That's when the sanctions began. That's when the whole idea of sanctioning Iran began, with the hostage crisis.
I would like to see someone, those who were involved personally, simply to say what many of them in fact have said. Look, as you Iranians would say, we ate sugar, and we were young and we were stupid, and young people do stupid things. And now, on consideration, this was not the right thing. This was not the right thing to do. It's not for me to forgive anybody. It's for people to have their own judgment. But someone who does something emotional and ill-judged at 20, by the time he or she is 50, should reconsider it. I mean, when I was 20, I did stupid things. And I look back at them and I think, no, that wasn't a very smart thing to do. But if I still say, oh, no, that was the right thing to do, that was always, and I consider to continue to insist on them, that's not very smart.
حرکت دانشجویان خط امام یا گروهی که سفارت امریکا رو اشغال کردن باعث شدن که ایران اساساً برای همیشه از مدار جاذبه امریکا خارج بشه و یک کشور مستقلی باشه. بنابراین دیگه امکان بازگشتش به اون مدار جاذبه به عنوان وابسته به نظر من وجود نداره و به همین دلیل اتفاقاً امکان اینکه این به راحتی بتونه با دنیا رابطه برقرار کنه و از شرایط انزوا در بیاد بیشتر فراهمه.
ما اینجا شرکت کردیم تا بگیم که آمریکا هیچ غلطی نمیتونه بکنه.
That's the issue. In a situation like that, the issue of forgiveness it really isn't important. What happened, what happened. As I mentioned, the real villains in the piece were those in authority, who had the authority and the responsibility to say, no, this is not right. We will not do this, and stop it. But not only they did not do that, they actually took advantage of the situation.
این مبین سیاست به اصطلاح معارضه ما و آمریکا هست. فقط همین. مادامی که اون آشتی اتفاق نیفته، حرکاتی از این دست در ایران خواهد بود. فقط اون نیستش، حرکات دیگه هم اتفاق میفته. طرفین ورزشکارا هم دیگه راه نمیدن، ویزا با هم دیگه خیلی بد میدن، ممکنه یه جای پرچم آمریکا سوزونده بشه. این اتفاقات دیگه هم میفته. یا تو خیلی از مجامع با هم همکاری نمیکنن، علیه هم دیگه صحبت میکنن. اینا همه جلوه های اون تخاصمیه که بین دو طرف هستش.
The culture of Iran is not reflected by this regime, and all Iranians want freedom and democracy like anybody in the United States, anybody in the world.
مجموعاً اون چیزی رو که در انقلاب براش تلاش کردیم و می‌خواستیم بهش برسیم، اون رو هنوز هم بهش معتقدیم و اصلا انقلاب رو افتخار می‌کنیم که بخشی از این انقلاب بودیم بدون تردید. ولی امروز مقایسه اگر بکنیم با اون چیزهایی که می‌خواستیم به دست بیاریم فکر می‌کنیم خیلیشو به دست نیاوردیم. این بحث دیگریه. ما اصلا در این نتیجهش نفی انقلاب نیست. ما حتما رژیم شاه رو یک رژیمی می‌دونستیم که به هیچ وجه صلاحیت نداره که در کشور ما حکومت بکنه و باید میرفت کنار و یه نظام جدید و رژیم جدید می‌آمد. ولی خب در رژیم جدید مشابه تقریبا همه انقلاب‌ها خیلی تصوراتی داشتیم که فکر می‌کردیم بعد از انقلاب بهش میرسیم که اون تصورات در حقیقت ذهنی بود و به این راحتی نمیتونستیم بهش برسیم که ما که امروز نرسیدیم.
Anybody who is my age or older remembers the hostage crisis very well. We will not forget this. And I have written, that there needs to be a process of forgiveness, that Iran should apologize for what it did. We should apologize for what we did to Iran. The 53, supporting Saddam in the Iran-Iraq war, shooting down the airliner, all the horrible things we've done to Iran, in some sense also the sanctions, because they've had a really bad effect on ordinary people. But it has to be mutual. That means Iran has to apologize finally. And I would love to see some of the former hostages go back to Iran and meet with the former hostage holders and shake hands with them and have some sort of real human people-to-people reconciliation between them.
One important period I thought that there might have been a possibility that there might be movement between the United States and Iran occurred in 1998. There was a human rights movement that appealed to me and also seemed to have appealed to Abbas Abdi, who in the long run was the mastermind of the takeover. And we met on, it was under, I think, UNICEF auspices in Paris in 1998. And there we spent a week together. And I have to say, while the press observations were negative concerning our relations, they misunderstood us completely. We really did get along very well. And in fact, I thought that Abdi was working with President Khatami at that time in some way trying to build this sort of ping-pong diplomacy between the American hostages and the hostage takers.
که من خودم چرا اون کارو کردم، در واقع یک دلیل اصلیش برمیگشت به این که به حال به دنیا نشون بدیم یه اتفاق بوده، دلیلی هم داشته، قابل دفاع هم هست، اما این همه اتفاقای دیگه گذشته، تموم شده رفته. این یکی از گامایی بود که برای بستن پرونده مطرح بود. و یکی دیگر این که خب به حال این اصلا یک اتفاق انسانی نبوده، بلکه یه اتفاق سیاسی بوده. یعنی چی؟ شما جنگ دو کشور رو دیدید، وقتی که دارن تو جبهه می‌جنگن، سربازای دو کشور ممکنه همدیگه رو بکشن به اشد وجه، اما هنگامی که آژیر آتش بس کشیده میشه همه میذارن زمین، چه بسا دو طرف ممکنه تو جبهه با هم مسابقه فوتبال هم بدن. معناش اینه که این دوتا که دارن تو جبهه میجنگن دشمنی شخصی با هم ندارن، به نمایندگی از دو تا کشور و دو تا نهاد حقوقی، دو تا وضعیت حقوقی دارن با هم میجنگن.
We had a tremendously good week together. We spoke publicly, but it all came to naught because when he returned home, he went on trial and he was sent away to prison. And I remember I had written op-eds concerning him and so forth, but it all sort of fizzled out. I think that if it were a move by Khatami, it was, I thought, ingenious, but the rightists in the right wing in Iran, the newspapers were so impossible, and they treated him so badly that whole attempt, or might have been an attempt by the president at that time, fell to pieces very, very quickly.
بحث اساسی این بود که این گروگانگیری این وسط وجود نداره، گروگانی هم وجود نداره. اگر هست عین جبهه هست که اینا به نمایندگی از یه ملت بودن، اونا هم به نمایندگی از یک دولت بودن. اما هنگامی که آتش بس میشه، خب اینا میتونن با هم کاملا رفاقت کنن، بگن، بخندن، شام بخورن، بازی کنن. در واقع معناش همینه. هنگامی که صحبت میکنید به معناش، به یه معناش اینه که دیگه جنگ تموم شده محسوب میشه.
Interestingly, you know, Abdi and I, the first thing that came out was this personal feeling. I mean, we actually shook hands and then hugged each other, and one of the first things he said, he says, I want to apologize to you. And my wife and my daughter were with me, because I thought it would be very important for them. And he was personally very, very solicitous towards both of them, and he apologized to them publicly and personally. And then it just seemed like any relationship I had with any Iranian.
We should forget it, in the sense we should move on. It's taken us 30 years to get to the point where we're talking about how we can get started. And it's absolutely ridiculous that it's taken us that length of time. But we've got to do it. We've got to overcome the past of this crisis. Our interests with Iran are too great to leave it in this kind of ambiance.
یه عده اعتقادشون این بود که اون حادثه منجر به تثبیت یه چیزایی شد، مثل تثبیت روحانیت یا حذف لیبرال ها از صحنه سیاسی کشور، یا منجر به این شد که جنگ ایران و عراق انجام بشه، عراق به ایران حمله کنه، یا روابط ایران و امریکا مسدود بشه و جوانها قادر نباشن برای تحصیل به امریکا برن. خیلی پیامدها رو به اسم اون حادثه میگذارن، ولی این مسئولش کسی که جواب بده خود ملتن. ماها مسئول نیستیم. ما به عنوان جوانایی بودیم که وقتی این کار رو کردیم انتظارمون هم این بود که 48 ساعت بعد کارو تمومش کنیم. خود ملت بودن که اومدن راهپیمایی کردن، تایید کردن، حمایت. خودشون باید نسبت به اون قضیه واکنش نشون بدن. Let's give it up, folks. It's time to end this It's way, way too long, and it's getting very boring too.
و اینو همیشه گفتم اشغال سفارت نتیجه بازی رو مساوی و 1-1 کرده، اما دیگه به آخر دقیقش رسیده. هی نباید اینو بازی رو وقت اضافهش رو طولانی کرد که حالا یکی دیگه هم یکی از طرفین یه گل دیگه بزنه دوباره بمونیم برای بازی برگشت.
I hope that we would get beyond it. I would tell you a story, though. I've used this story before. A few months ago, I was on a Voice of America Persian service program, and there was a call-in show. And someone from Iran called in and said, you know, it's been 30 years since these events. You know, you and the Americans you really ought to get over it now. It's finished. 30 years have passed. So my response was, fine, I'm happy to do that, but tell me, are you as an Iranian ready to get over the events of 1953? Never.